John Scalzi is one of the most popular sci-fi authors of his generation.
I wrote that.
Oh, it gets better. His debut, Old Man's War, won him the John W. Campbell Award for Best New Writer. His New York Times bestsellers include The Last Colony, Fuzzy Nation, Red Shirts, one of my favorites, which won the 2013 Hugo Award for Best Novel, The Last Enrich, the Kaiju Preservation Society, and Star Villain. He lives in Ohio with his wife and daughter. He's something, and I told him I was going to say this, he's something of a social media connoisseur. I cut in no less than 10 icons of various social media, including Twitter, Blue Sky, and Facebook, etc., on his blog, Whatever. He also has a blog, whatever.scalzi.com, that he writes on vociferously, and has itself earned him 2 other Hugo Awards. So how he has time to write novels, I have no idea, but I'm really glad he does. I've read several of his books, and I read and enjoyed When the Moon Hits Your Eye. It's about how the world will react when the moon suddenly is mysteriously changed. His ability to take such a fantastical premise and explore the new dynamics of the moon and how ordinary people react is a real testament to his skill as an author. So the moderator today is Andrea Pauly. She lives and writes science fiction and sometimes fantasy in Washington, D.C. She volunteers for the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association and also reviews for the Washington Independent Review of Books. She has blogged for Weightless Books and served as a blog master for the Potomac River Review literary journal. But perhaps most impressively, she has worked for the National Institutes of Health, NASA, the U.S. Coast Guard, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So, Andrea, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jackson. I do like the jacket, too. Yeah. Hello, John.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm all right. I cannot complain.
How's your chair? Is it slidey?
You know, it is slidey, but I have.
Is this what we should do?
I have planted myself like this.
Yeah.
It makes me look like I'm supremely relaxed. But what it does is it keeps me from squirting into the front row, which nobody wants, right? This is not a Gallagher concert, so.
No, but as weird and awesome as your book was that you just published, I think anyone would expect you with the moon when the moon hits your eye. I think shooting into the front of the audience would not be out of the norm.
Right, but what would happen then? People would just all of a sudden they would get on social media. Oh my God, what John Scalzi cannot be contained by a single chair. I want to stay where I am. Thank you. You're all wonderful people, but I don't want to get any closer to you than I already am.
So I spent some time over the past couple of weeks trying to figure out what I would hand you. Because last time I interviewed you, I said I would show up in a Godzilla costume.
Yes, you did.
And luckily it was like 100 degrees 2 years ago at this festival, so I did not show up.
Luckily.
Yeah, I know.
Luckily you had an excuse not to honor the thing that you said that you would do, and I have been disappointed for 2 years straight. That's fine. I'll just sit here by myself thinking about what could have been.
I would have died.
That is a you problem.
So here's what I did instead. I did not get you anything. Oh. But here are the things that I did. Okay, so I did not spend $35 buying a shirt that had cheese on it, okay?
Okay, well, good.
Okay, but I also did not go to Safeway. I live in D.C., Safeway, 4th Street. I did not go to Safeway and buy you a brick of Velveeta. I was going to do that, okay? And then yesterday I was at Kohl's. And, they have all that stuff at the end of you're like...
The impulse buys.
It's crazy. And they had a brick of cheese, like a squishy brick of cheese. And I thought, if I hand John this giant squishy brick of cheese, I'm going to get it back in my face. I knew I would, right? What would you have done if I handed you a stress relief squeeze cheese?
Stress relief squeeze cheese. Again, immediately to social media. Oh my God, John Scalzi fondling cheese in front of a festival audience. Not the thing. But I will assure you that even if you were to hand me a block of cheese, it is not the weirdest food stuff that I have been offered while on an event. Would you like to know what
John,
that is?
what is the weirdest food stuff you've been offered while on an event?
I am glad you have asked that question, Andrea. So many years ago, I think it was about 30,000 Twitter followers back before Twitter went wonky. Scandal noted. And I said, if I get to 30,000 followers, then I am going to slather myself in buttercream frosting and run around my front yard naked. And another account with 1 million followers retweeted that. And so I'm on book tour. And of course, I hit 30,000 followers, so people are expecting me now to do the buttercream frosting thing. I'm on book tour, and I'm in Minneapolis signing books, and then someone comes, and they just plop down this entire Tupperware thing with like 4 quarts of buttercream frosting. And I look at it, I'm like, what am I supposed to do with that? And they look me dead in the eye, and they say, practice. So here's the thing is I think I'm a pretty normal guy, right? And yet, this is the sort of stuff that happens to me. People are like, I'm going to give you cheese to fondle. Here's some buttercream frosting. Oh, I've crocheted you this suit.
You're welcome.
Here, yes, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for all thinking that I'm not a normal person.
I was wondering, how do you feel about introducing the word moon cheese to so many innocent people?
So here's the thing is that there is actually a company that has a product that is called Moon Cheese. And if you were one of the influencers, I'm sorry, am I causing you troubles? Check the connection.
Mine is better than yours.
There we go. Squeeze the microphone. This does not look bad at all. No, it's fine. It's fine. No. Is that better? Okay. So Moon Cheese does exist. And so one of the things that we actually had to think about is like, are we going to get sued by the Moon Cheese people? Because when you have a trademark, you actually have to actively enforce your trademark. So I've been waiting for that one certified letter that says, by the way, Moon Cheese is the trademark of such and such thing. Because they have to do that. They just it's just a form letter that they're going to do.
What I thought, I was really surprised by some of the things that you clearly either got permission for or are waiting for the letter about. I just want to know, was part of the reason you wrote this book so you'd have a reason to contemplate how much Scrooge McDuck was worth?
Oh, so for those of you who have not read the book, right, which is called When the Moon Hits Your Eye, it's not a spoiler. The moon turns to cheese, as it would. And then for an entire lunar cycle, every chapter is a day in the lunar cycle and has a different set of characters talking about the events of the day, right?
And now everyone thinks Scrooge McDuck is one of your characters.
So one of the days is a bunch of high school kids who are deeply, deeply nerdy, talking about billionaires and how much they might be worth, and how much Scrooge McDuck is actually worth, because there are conflicting reports about how much Scrooge McDuck is worth. And of course, he has that big, tall, silo of gold coins that he dives into, which, by the way, don't do that. That would kill you. Don't ask me how I know. But Tor pays me very well. So that's part of the argument. But no, you can absolutely talk about Scrooge McDuck in that context. I can't use Scrooge McDuck as a character in my book, except in parody purposes, but otherwise. But
well
talking
done.
about how much he is worth, because the estimates range from 50 billion to 600 quadrillion, although that is his own self-estimation, which, like with so many billionaires of their net worth, should be taken with a grain of salt.
So at what point did you suspect it might actually be possible for the moon to be transformed into cheese? At what point in the past 2 to 20 years?
I mean, the thing about it, there's two things that are going on. One, we all know about the idea of the moon turning to cheese because we've all heard it like forever and ever. It's not, I hate to tell you, it's not an idea original to me. I did not make that up.
No one has ever taken it to the point you've taken it to,
No,
John.
they haven't. But that's.
Are you trying to become the foremost expert on the moon turning to cheese so you can make $1 bajillion on a book tour?
No.
Confess.
That's not how book tours work, unfortunately. No, but here's the thing, which is that I have discovered that I have a really profitable sideline business in taking ideas that everybody knows about and somehow taking that extra step about them. Like, the example I give is like red shirts. All you all, because y'all nerds, right, know what a red shirt is. It's, Scotty, Kirk, Spock, and Ensign Jones all beamed down to the surface. Somebody has to die before the first commercial break. Who's it going to be? It's not going to be someone whose name is in the credits. So... but the thing is, it's become such a trope that people are like, oh yeah, it's the red shirts, ha ha ha. It's a 5-minute joke, and that's fine. The 5-minute joke is great. But then there's the whole thing of, let's go beyond the 5-minute joke. Let's think about Ensign Jones. Did you know that Ensign Jones was the top of his class at the academy? That's why he got assigned to the flagship of the Federation, because this was a guy who was on his way up. He put in the work, he did all the networking, he did everything he was supposed to do. He gets on the Enterprise, he's like, I am on my way. I'm going to be Admiral Jones in 20 years. And then he gets eaten by a space badger for plot purposes. Right? And you think about that. You think about the fact is there's that old saying. It's not old. It's relatively new, but it doesn't make it less true that every corpse on Mount Everest was a highly motivated individual. This is what the red shirts are. And so you think about it more from their point of view. Someone who is a striver, someone who is at the top of his class, someone who has a really bright future, who expects great things and from whom great things are expected, and then space badgers, right? And that is the great existential terror of red shirts. Not that they are expendable, but all their life they were the chosen one, and then they just got into a room with people who were more chosen.
And one of the things you had, like you mentioned, you had a bunch of different chapters, different POVs. I don't think you ever had the same POV chapter the whole time. You picked up storylines from slightly different characters in those. And one of the early ones you had was astronaut. I'm totally blanking on her name right now.
LeMay.
I loved her storyline, especially how she got caught up in a scandal with the senator.
Yeah.
It was insane. Like the thing you do is just, you're like, the path you go down is completely nuts.
Well, that was the whole point of it, right? Again, we have the idea of the concept of the moon turning to cheese, and everybody's heard that idea, but how would everybody deal with it, right? And since we all know that the lunar cycle, we all know, because y'all nerds, that the lunar cycle is 29 1/4 days long, that immediately chops it up into 29 chapters. And it makes no sense not to just follow one person. You want to have as much head hopping as possible because it's about something that is going to be universal. If the moon turns to cheese, we all have to deal with it. You 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 have to deal with it. We all have to experience the same thing together. And this is, again, going beyond the one thing that we all think we know about the moon turning to cheese. Yes, it's a childhood, nursery rhyme and stuff like that. But there's also the fact that all of us, however old we are, whatever generation we are, have dealt with things that have happened to all of us that none of us have had any control over. Sometimes they've been wars, sometimes they've been depressions, sometimes they've been elections, whatever they have been. And then we all have to deal with it. So the idea behind this is to get as many perspectives as possible because this is a universal issue. So yes, an astronaut's going to deal with it, but so are the kids in the lunchroom, and so is the person who is trying to make film and television who's getting all the pitches about the moon turning to cheese suddenly. All of those sorts of, that head hopping was sort of demanded by the fact that the moon is in everybody's sky.
And one of the things that I really liked about your book too was the all the different perspectives. But when I got to the chapter that you wrote where the two people were trying to get in to see, they got to see a taping of Saturday Night Live, and that was what the whole episode, what the whole chapter was about.
Yeah.
These two kind of like one disconsolate friend and one who's trying to motivate her friend, and they get in to see. First of all, I didn't know that they had a dress rehearsal for SNL. Okay, and so I learned that, but that was interesting. And then, but just how far off the rails that SNL thing goes, because by the time you get to this chapter, like, everybody knows this is possibly not a good situation with the moon. And I was like, wait, what is John Scalzi doing to me? I'm not supposed to be laughing and depressed at the same time.
John Scalzi, funny and depressing all at once. Boy, somebody put that on a cover. That's going to be...
I love that SNL chapter where, was it one of the Weekend Update hosts ends up being carried out by all his friends while flipping the bird to, like, the audience?
So,
like, it was so in character.
Well, but here's the thing about writing books like the ones that I'm doing, like, again, Red Shirts or The Moon or even Starter Villain or Kaiju Preservation Society. I don't want to say it's easy to write it farcically because farce is hard, but that's what people expect. Oh, the moon has turned to cheese, ha 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 ha, which is fine. I also want to make you cry. I also want to make you weep legitimate tears and curse me for doing so. One of my favorite reviews of Moon is from Mary Robinette Cole, who is another author, who will be here at 1:30 or 1:15 to do her event. So absolutely go see her as well. But she read an early copy of it, and she went on to Goodreads, and she goes, "This book shouldn't work. I'm angry that it does. He made me cry in an airport. F you, John Scalzi. How dare?" And I'm like, "Phew." That is exactly what I was intending to do. But that's the whole point. You know, the easy path is to be like, "Oh, it's supposed to be funny. Ha 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 ha." But that's not the best way to tell the story. You have to actually make people care about the moon turning to cheese or about the fact that these people are red shirts. Because if you don't, then it is a one-note, sort of thing. And I don't. If you're going to get beyond what people are expecting, you have to basically play the entire keyboard. And so, yes, I am definitely going to make you laugh. I am definitely going to have absurdities and all that sort of stuff. But I am also going to really try to make you cry, make you think, make you be like, no, this actually would be a bad thing, to have the moon turn to cheese or to not be the captain of my own fate, as a person on a starship or whatever.
I mentioned this when I emailed you before, but you made me cry over the cheesemonger brothers who were feuding. Like,
Right.
what am I doing crying over cheesemongers?
That is exactly what I wanted you to do.
So mean.
Thank you very much.
Mary Robinette is totally right.
I mean, I accept your calumny. I absolutely intended it to do. Well, but that's the other thing is that you also, as a writer, you have to be willing to do things that your audience may not want you to do. Right? They absolutely, like, if you've read the Interdependency series, there is a particular character that people got very, very attached to. And then something happens, and then I get emails. "You MFer, how dare you? How could you do this? I see why you had to do it, but it makes me angry anyway." And I'm like, that is indeed what it's supposed to do. You are indeed supposed to be angry that was in fact the thing that should have been done. So yeah, no, that's the whole thing is like, if I just give you what you think you want, then you're going to be like, yeah, it was okay, right? If I give you some of the things you want and then some of the things that you didn't want and some of the things you didn't know that you either didn't want or did want, then you're going to think about the book once you close it. And it's going to continue with you past the confines of just simply reading that book that one time. That's the plan, at least. I mean, it's certainly possible to read my books and be like, oh, well, that was a thing that happened and put it away and that's done and that's you. I still have your money. So that's great. But I do try to write the books that once you close them up, if you want to, there are things to think about.
And in a row, I read Kaiju Preservation Society,
Yep.
and then Starter Villain,
Yep.
and then When the Moon Hits Your Eye, and I enjoyed all of those books. But I definitely think that I will continue to be thinking about this one.
Yeah.
You really did get under my skin
Yeah.
about, and yeah, why did I say it that way? But you did.
I
That's
don't
what I
know
meant.
why you said it that other way.
Under
and
my
I'm
skin
super
about some of
uncomfortable
those things. Yeah. So no, it was pretty amazing. So, okay, you mentioned email. I'm going to come back to that.
Okay.
What people email you over the years? I believe your rules about blocking people and how you interact with them have become more specific.
Yeah.
But you must have gotten a number of emails. In the book, you refused to even truly commit to it being cheese, but you refused to say what kind of cheese. And I read why. I listened to this book.
Yep.
And
Yep.
what have people said they think has happened with the moon?
Okay, so
I want to know.
so
It's going to be crazy.
Okay, so here's the thing: is as I was writing this book, and people were like, "What book are you writing?" I'm like, "The Moon Turns to Cheese," and there were two reactions. The first was, "Yes, of course you are," in exactly that tone of voice. Anybody else would know that that's a stupid idea, but not you, John Scalzi. And the other question that immediately falls after that is like, yes, it's a book about the moon turning to cheese. What kind of cheese? Literally, the question everybody wants to know, what kind of cheese? And then when I explained that I'm not going to tell people, they're incredibly angry. They're just very, very angry. That's like, that's not fair. It's not fair that you turn the moon to cheese and you won't tell us what kind of cheese it is. That's just wrong on so many levels. It makes me unhappy. But there are two reasons why I didn't do it. The first is, quite frankly, the moon has turned to cheese. Do you think there's going to be a direct analog to the sort of cheese that's on Earth? That's really Earth-centric of you, and I think you should really examine your perspectives. But the other thing is that if I specified what kind of cheese it was, one of you, because all y'all are nerds, would come up to me and be like, so I actually did the math on this, and I want you to know that actually the diameter of the moon would have been completely different, and the compression levels would not have worked the way that you thought that they would have. And so how does it feel to be a complete failure? So the secret to getting away with science fiction is to give enough information that it sounds like you know what you're talking about, and then stop. Because the instant you go over your skis, all y'all are on them, right? Because you're just like, no, that's not actually how it works. That's not how it works at all. There was one time where I put in a typo, and I swear it was a typo. It was in Ghost Brigades, where I had someone up here, yes, you did. Yes, you did do this thing, and it was wrong. And it was. I said an asteroid was in a hyperbolic orbit as opposed to a parabolic orbit. And I wrote it, and I was like, oh, that's wrong, but I'm on a flow. I'm going to stop and just keep going. Forgot about it. It got submitted. I got the copy edited. I'm like, that's wrong. Let's change it. They're like, okay, we'll change it. They didn't change it. The arcs went out. I was like, can we please change that? They will absolutely be changed. The hardcover comes out. It's still in there. And now I get emails. You know that the actual asteroids don't do a hyper. I know this for a fact. And it's like, can we please change this into paperback? And they're like, absolutely. Guess what? It's been fixed now, 16 years after it went out. But this is a problem, because when the translations come from different languages, they go from the hardcover. So not only am I wrong, I'm wrong in 23 languages. L'orbite parabolique, So yes, I'm well aware that if I state with authority a thing that is not feasibly provable, the thing that is feasibly provable, some nerd is going to come and get me. But the flip side of that is that while I'm on tour, people come up and be like, I think I know what cheese it is. I did the math. And then whatever cheese. It's Emmentaler, isn't it? I'm like, That is an amazing amount of deduction that you've done. Well done, you.
Okay, so I know you have refused to say what kind of cheese is it. We all know that you have a cheese in mind. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But let me give you a hypothetical.
Oh, here it comes.
Okay. Okay.
I was saying some nerd will have done the
Okay.
work.
If you were hit by an asteroid shaped like a cracker, what type of cheese would be on that asteroid cracker?
Okay, so here's the thing. It's physically impossible to be hit by an asteroid that is shaped like a cracker because that cracker would have had so much air resistance that it would have immediately, he's nodding over here, it would have immediately fragmented in orbit. So this is a nonsense question. Unless I was on the moon, which has no atmosphere.
You're making things up.
No, this is hard science. I expect every physicist in this audience to back me up. But as far as it goes, if there's an atmosphere involved, then that cracker's not making it into orbit. It's not going to just come down on the edge the entire time. At some point or another, it's going to wobble, and then it's just going to come.
I'm going to refrain from asking the audience at what point they all knew that you were just making it up. But okay, I have another very important question. Have you ever met a billionaire that you like?
Yes. Yes. Although he may not have been a billionaire, he may have just been the son of a billionaire. But from a behavioral perspective, that's pretty much the same.
Okay, setting aside that one billionaire that you met.
So here's the thing. So here's the thing about billionaires, which is, if you've read my books, you know that billionaires are not people who meet good ends in my books. Part of that is wish fulfillment. But part of it is also the recognition, and it actually, you don't need to be a billionaire for this, but after a certain point, you become with enough money, you could become completely inoculated from all the concerns of the world, right? I am nowhere near billionaire status. I can't tell you how much anything costs anymore because Tor has done very well for me. You have all bought my books. Thank you very much. I go to a store. I say, I want that. I buy it. It's done, right? I don't sit there and think about how much things cost. That sounds great, and it is, but it also means that I am at a remove from at least some of the actual day-to-day concerns that people have. That is the most trivial removal of concern for me as a well-off American. The richer you get, the fewer concerns that you have. Eventually, you will have some concerns because it doesn't matter how rich you are, you're still going to die, right? Even that billionaire guy who's like, I'm taking platelets from my son. That's not weird at all. That guy is fucking weird, okay? It's like what I'm saying, it's like I have a son and I just use him for his platelets. That's absolutely not on the spectrum at all. As far as it goes, the further along you go, the less and less you care. And also, the fewer and fewer people around you who you have to listen to, right? Because there does become that bend in the curve where you're like, everybody who can say, no, in fact, you're wrong, and you really need to rethink your way of thinking, have left, right? Because you stopped listening to them, and the only people who remain are like, that's a great idea, sir. That's an amazing idea. You should implement that right away. And so that insulation happens, and you become someone who sits there and goes, why, yes, in fact, why genocide is a real thing, or why, yes, in fact, why don't people just everybody get a job? That makes sense. Or what? People really don't need health care. That's, AI will solve that problem for us. All of those sorts of things that a day-to-day person would be like, that's not how the world works. Unfortunately, that is how the world works for them. And so when you are dealing with billionaires, and I have dealt with billionaires and people who are very, very rich, they're all super nice people. They're super nice people, and you talk to them, and you're like, oh, you don't know how the world works at all. You have absolutely no idea what it is like for the 99.99%. You just literally don't have a clue. Even if they grew up poor, right? It doesn't matter. On a day-to-day basis, they're so removed from things. So it's not that I hate every billionaire. It's just that I recognize that they don't lead normal lives. And the idea that they will ever get to a place where they will lead normal lives is wishful thinking. The only way that they will live normal lives is if you take all their money from them.
And still,
I don't know.
Maybe not.
We do.
Yeah, so this book had a storyline that involved a billionaire. And I have to tell you, you surprised me many times in this book. I did not know. I totally expected the billionaire storyline to go a different way. And I was super entertained by what you did. You shocked me. But you also had, in Kaiju Preservation Society, one of the big forces in that book was also like super rich person.
Oh, sure. And in Starter Villain, everybody, all the evil people are billionaires. Because, you know, let's be real. If you're going to be evil on an industrial scale, you need capital, right? And how are you going to get that? One, you're going to be a billionaire. Think of the people who are doing the most damage in the world right now on a per capita basis tend to be extremely, extremely rich. And again, everything is scale. So, but this is the other thing about billionaires is also money works differently for them. There's this thing that I actually make mention of in Moon, but also specifically in Starter Villain, which is like all those billionaires have a tendency to be really cash poor. Like they don't actually have much liquid money.
Yet another thing I learned from your book, and I took that away. I was like, they really don't have money. In Starter Villain, you did a great job of laying that out. They don't have cash.
They don't have cash.
So talk about that, because seriously,
well, I mean,
it was awesome.
So here's the way that they get around that.
The book was not all about the monetary situation.
No,
but it was freaking hilarious for anyone who has read it.
But this is why again, the way that you can get money when you're a billionaire also removes consequence, because what happens is, so all your money is basically built out of stock, right? It's like, oh, I'm worth $86 billion and it's in stock. But all of that stock, if you tried to cash it all out, it would immediately drop and would not be worth anything what you think it is. But you don't need to do that, because you can go to a bank and say, I want a loan based on, here's my capital. I have $86 billion in reserve. And so they'll just give you $100 million in walking around money. And you don't care about that, because the amount they give it to you at an extremely low interest rate, so you don't have to worry about paying back the interest before you get to the capital and all that sort of stuff. And the other thing is when the interest comes due, you'll just take out another loan, right? And they'll just continue to do that. So you basically get this tax-free, however much money that you want, and you just walk around with it. And that is a thing that you can do when you're a billionaire that you can't do when you are a normal person. They'll be like, oh, we can give you money at 9.8% or 22.4% if you're on a credit card, and they'll make your payments so that you never ever build down the principal and just milk you until you die. Whereas a billionaire, they'll be like, we'll give it to you for free. Just invest what money you have with us, because then they'll put it to work. It works completely different. So don't feel bad for the billionaires who are illiquid. They are fine. But do understand that money works differently at that level. It's like quantum physics. If you look close enough, things get really wonky in a way that don't work that way in your real life. So,
yes.
Another physics thing.
Although I did, when I was, one of the results of reading Starter Villain was I was reading something in The Economist like a month ago, and they mentioned like a Goldman Sachs illiquidity issue. And I was like, oh, are they going to be okay? I guess they don't actually have money. And then I was like, John Scalzi has done this to me. Why has he done this? I don't feel bad for Goldman Sachs people. But that was you. I was mad at you randomly. Do you get that through the air from people sometimes?
You should not feel bad for Goldman Sachs.
I do. I know. I shouldn't.
You really should not. You should feel bad for everybody who's going to be punished because Goldman Sachs all of a sudden runs out of money.
I was able to wrap myself around pretty
quickly.
Whole,
the whole 2008 thing didn't. All the people who were at Goldman Sachs or Bear Stearns or any of those places, they did not miss a meal. People lost their houses. They did not.
No. Exactly.
Hi, we're talking science fiction.
This is what happens when I read one of your books.
But this is actually a really good point, which is that people think that science fiction is not about real life. Guess what? It can be about real life. The things that we touch upon in science fiction are things that are relatable in the real world, particularly when the books that I've written recently that take place in contemporary time. You cannot ignore the real world, even when you have talking cats and unionized dolphins and the moon turning to cheese.
Oh my God, I love those unionized dolphins.
Everybody loves
seriously, if you haven't read Starter Villain, after you do this book, go read that.
Yeah.
I laugh
That
so
was
much.
a funny book because I don't
funny
know.
to read.
Does somebody have a copy of Starter Villain? Hold up. So look over there. You'll see it has a cat on the cover. We think that 10 to 15% of the sales of the book were literally just people being like, I have no idea who you are, but cat. Like, I was on book tour, and people came up, and they're like, I don't know what this book is about, but cat. And again, my ethos was, that's fine, I have your money.
Back to the dolphins. Not only were they unionized, but they were really foul-mouthed.
Have you? Okay, so here's the thing:
Amazing.
is that dolphins in the real world have the best PR, and it's complete lie. They are awful. They are awful, harassing drug users.
Yes.
It's not a joke. They will poke at puffer fishes to get them to release toxins, and then they'll go. Except they'll do it like this. This is not a joke. Look it up. Yeah, someone over here is like, I believe you, sir. Yes. No, it's absolutely true. And the thing is like, so when I was writing this, I'm like, I am going to just rip, like Scooby-Doo, with the villain thing, going to rip the mask off the dolphins and let you see who they are. And they are terrible. From a point of view of economics, they're absolutely correct, but terrible people can be right.
Okay, so we are 12 minutes from the end of this. Should we start taking some
Yes, let's take
questions?
questions now. So I have rules for questions because there's a lot of you and we want to get to as many questions as possible. First, questions in the form of a question. 2, questions are one-part questions. 3, questions as short as you can possibly make them. I used to say make them tweet length, but we don't talk about that site anymore. So, and again, the reason to do that is to get to as many questions as we can in 12 minutes. And as you can tell, I don't stop talking. So, raise your hands. Let's start.
Does your cat use those buttons that help them to talk?
So there are buttons that you can use for cats that they can make sentences and stuff out of. My cats don't. I don't want to know what my cats think because I know what they think. And I don't need words attached to that. However, again, Mary Robinette Cole, who will be speaking at 1:15, has a cat that uses the buttons, makes complete sentences, as in her hotel room right now. Do not go to her hotel room to see the cat. That's creepy. But she will be happy to talk about that. Next question.
Would you talk a little bit about how current conspiracy theories inform the end of How the Moon Hit Your Eye when... I don't know if I can say it.
Yeah, so without spoiling it, one of the things that is happening right now in the world, and it comes straight out of the fascist playbook, by the way, it's not even a joke, is muddying the line between truth and falsehood. And it's an intentional thing, and the whole point of doing it is not to confuse you per se, but to get you to the point of moral exhaustion where you're like, it doesn't matter what's true or not, right? And you would have to be in a blessed state of ignorance not to recognize that that is a thing that is going on today. And so it is a thing that I incorporate in the book. And it is possibly the most controversial ending of a book that I've ever done because people are like, now I don't know what to think. And I'm literally like, you read the entire book and yet you're still confused. Think on that and then apply that to your actual consumption of news and information today. So, next question.
Are any of your books that are not direct sequels of each other in the same universe?
Are any of my books that are not direct sequels in the same universe? No. For 2 reasons. That's way too much organization on my part. And then also, and this is going to sound really bloodless and money thirsty, but if I ever do that, then I open myself up to lawsuits by the people who option my work, because then they'll be like, no, we now have the option to that book too. So I keep all my ingredients separate, so to speak. Next question. Okay, and let's also get back into back there too.
Kind of jumping off of the world building a little bit. How do you, because you've written all these books where you have something and you've changed the world, and how do you start to research or think about what these changes are going to do, both big and small, to the world as a whole? Like your dispatchers or your Haydens or...
Yeah, I mean, it's just literally I think of the thing, and then I start thinking about, oh, how would that change the world? If, in fact, the moon turned to cheese, how would that change the world? And the first thing would be, people would be like, I thought I knew how the universe worked, but clearly I don't. And that's a crisis of knowledge, a crisis of faith, a crisis of all these sorts of things. And so you just build off of those. And I'm just an obsessive, so I think about this stuff all the time. Thank God I have an outlet that gives me money for it.
How often are you utilizing back-pocketed anecdotes, stories, ideas when you're writing these books versus coming up with them in the process of writing that story?
I don't know how to answer that because everything gets pulled out of my ass. Like literally, I don't plot, I do all this sort of stuff. But I don't like something happens to me and I will not be like, oh, I'm going to save that for a book, because I have social media, right? It's going straight on to Blue Sky, right? Yeah, no. Experiences that I have inform what I do, but I don't do it in any sort of organized fashion. Next question.
To pull you away from Moon for just a moment, do you credit any specific authors or works for your inspiration behind the interdependency?
No, not specifically, but I don't really have a problem crediting people simply because all y'all are nerds and someone will be like, excuse me, you thought you could rip off this person and think we wouldn't notice. And I don't ever have a problem like giving credit for the things that I've read and so on and so forth. A lot of people who have read The Interdependency think about Isaac Asimov and the Foundation. And certainly I've read it, so I can't say that that isn't there. But honestly, the instigating thing for The Interdependency was not a book, but me thinking about the trade currents and how they affected European colonization of the New World. So that's me. So next question.
Do you think of your books in a hierarchy of weirdness? Like, for example, I considered Kaiju weirder than this one. I mean, do you have like a pecking order of weirdness?
I don't think I need one. You have done an ample job yourself, sir. No, I don't think about them as like this one's weirder than this one. I do think about them in terms of look what I'm getting away with. It's true. Next question.
Yeah, if we could turn to Three Robots for a second, have you thought about expanding? It's given you've already done like a couple of stories based on those characters. Have you thought about expanding that to a novel?
So he's asking a question about there's a TV series called Love, Death, and Robots. Season 4 came out literally 2 days ago. I have 2 episodes in that. Go watch it if you have Netflix. But there are characters which are called the Three Robots, and there are 2 episodes of that. Am I going to do any more with that? Maybe. I got other things on the runway first, though. But I never, anytime anyone says, are you going to do more with, my answer is maybe. Never say never. Next question.
Do you have a specific scientific question or genre that you'd really like to visit in a future novel?
I don't know. Because literally, I'm weird. And so I have this incredibly long book contract that will take me until I'm at least 70. Do you want to know what all those books are about? So would I. I literally don't know until I start thinking about that. Like the book that I have already started writing, that will come out in probably October of 2026. I didn't know what it was until my editor said, "Oh, you need to start thinking about a book. We would like something in this kind of vein." And I was like, "Oh, well, here's an idea." And they're like, "We like that idea a lot. Go forward." So if you tell other writers that I have this long-ass book contract and no idea what I'm going to write, they will stab me to death. So don't tell them. but that's my life. So, yes, thank you. Yes, the camera's on.
Oh, I don't think anybody's brought up this story, but what or who inspired The President's Brain is Missing?
What or who inspired The President's Brain is Missing? The President's Brain is Missing is a story in which the president is given a X-ray and they find that his brain is completely out of his head. I don't know how many recent presidents could have possibly have inspired that. America, we got to do better with the presidents, man. And then get some more questions, and as soon as at some point they'll tell me to stop, but until then. 3 more minutes. Let's make them as quick as possible.
Would you rather the moon turn into cheese or have it revealed that it was actually the egg to a giant dragon, a la in Doctor Who?
I mean, it would be great for my book sales if the moon actually did turn to cheese.
I knew it.
Yes. I don't know if it's been made amply clear, but I like money. So, next question.
How did you come up with the science behind what happens to the moon when it does become cheese?
Oh, so there's unsurprisingly a lot of information historically about people being like, well, what would happen? So I basically went onto the internet and typed in science moon turning to cheese. And I was like, that sounds reasonable. And kind of used that as a basis. So, next question.
Where do you stand on the Wallace and Gromit theory that the moon is lots of different types of cheeses?
The lots of different types of cheeses. In my cheese moon, it is all the same cheese and it's undifferentiated when it arrives, which means that it has just, if you drilled all the way through, it would be the same density and level and everything like that, which is why it immediately starts to compress, right? Because it is all of a sudden affected by real-world physics. So that is an alternate theory, and I will not gainsay it, but my theories are different.
You're the worst.
I am. I'm literally the worst.
So, given the nature of the book, what's the worst cheese pun that you've come up with so far?
I mean, if you read the chapter where the poor film executive gets everything pitched to her, they're all in there. There are so many curds and whey puns in there. And I remember one review is like, thank you for putting them all in one chapter, and so we don't have to think about them again. I'm like, fair.
Okay, last question.
Last question.
If for some reason the moon couldn't be made of cheese in your book, what would have you have chosen next?
Oh, I don't know, because there's nothing else that has such cultural cachet. But every one of them would have the same sort of problem. If you make it out of any sort of edible organic material, it's going to basically be the same problem. It doesn't matter whether you made it out of pepperoni or if you made it out of cheese. Although the pepperoni moon has some really interesting ideas from that. And now I have a sequel. So, real quick, remember everybody that if you want me to sign books, I'm going to go over to where they'll tell you all about it, but I'll be doing that, and then I'm immediately leaving to go home. So let me just say from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Gaithersburg, for bringing me out again. Thank you, all of you people, for showing up. You have been wonderful. Thank you, Andrea, for talking to me again, and have a good rest of your festival.